I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up, so that's all you can really.
Caitlin Clark is furious heading into Game 3 of the WNBA semifinals against the Las Vegas Aces. The Indiana Fever didn't just lose Game 2, they had it ripped away. This wasn't about being outplayed, and it definitely wasn't about talent. The real story was how the officials practically handed the win to Las Vegas. A total of 41 fouls were called, with 16 in just one quarter, as players hit the floor on nearly every possession. Yet somehow the headlines painted Aya Wilson as the hero while Lexie Hull battled through a back injury that leaves her questionable for Game 3, taking punishment no player should ever have to endure. If this is what passes for playoff basketball in the WNBA, then the league has a credibility problem it can't afford to ignore. If you're cheering for Game 3, drop a Let's Go Fever in the comments.
Watch how the third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. A'ja Wilson creams Lexie Hull like she did 5 times in Game 1. Peggy Hammock get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. A'ja Wilson doesn't like Lexie Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul.
What makes this even more maddening is how Indiana still found ways to fight through the chaos. Remember Game 1? That wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Indiana walked into Las Vegas's fortress, the home of the 2-time champs, and dismantled them with discipline. Kelsey Mitchell, locked in from the opening tip, delivered the game of her life with 34 points, proving she could own the spotlight against the league's best. The Fever moved the ball, controlled the tempo, and shut down the Aces' attempts to play fast and flashy. It was calm, composed basketball, and it worked. Then there was the Wilson factor. On the night she was celebrated as MVP, she turned in one of her worst shooting games of the season. 6 makes on 22 attempts with multiple misses. Indiana swarmed her, forced her into uncomfortable spots, and never let her find rhythm. She had no answers. The Fever executed with precision while keeping fouls to a minimum, which should have been impossible in Las Vegas's building. The result was a 16-point blowout that sent shock waves through the league. That was Indiana's message. They weren't just happy to be here, they were ready to compete for real.
Wilson's just a big bully. Look at this. Throws Lexie Hull on the ground. Everything she does is illegal. Look at this one. A moving screen and then pushes Lexie Hull. You think they ever call a foul on A'ja Wilson?
But even in that win, people noticed the imbalance. The whistle already leaned toward the Aces, with foul numbers clearly skewed, though Indiana's dominance kept the issue buried beneath the scoreline. Still, you could sense what was coming. Las Vegas was embarrassed. The league's golden franchise had been punched in the mouth, and payback felt inevitable.
A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start.
So Game 2 arrived, and the Aces didn't just want to win. They wanted to send a message. The question wasn't whether they'd respond, but how far they'd go to claw momentum back. The answer was as ugly as it gets.
WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know A'ja Wilson only received.
From the opening minutes, Las Vegas abandoned basketball for brute force. Forearms, shoulders, collisions on nearly every possession. The referees let it slide under the label of playoff physicality. But when you stack up 41 fouls and 16 in a single quarter, that's not intensity, that's chaos. The Fever had a chance to find rhythm.
Why don't you think you were able to find any flow? And when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept.
Every trip down the floor was chopped to pieces. A team built to run and flow was forced into broken half-court sets, the exact opposite of their identity. And while Indiana struggled through stop-and-start possessions, Las Vegas lived at the free throw line.
Yeah, Lexie, obviously you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play?
I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is it's the end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. Yeah, a lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for...
No one embodied this battle more than Lexie Hull. She shouldn't even have been out there. Her back was already banged up from Game 1, and most players would have sat. But Hull strapped in, stepped on the court, and fought. And how did the Aces respond? They targeted her. Every cut, every defensive rotation, every box out came with extra contact and extra shoves. She hit the deck more times than anyone should in a single game, but she refused to fold. Instead, she stepped to the perimeter and buried 5 3-pointers, tying the Fever playoff record. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't clean. It was defiance, pure and simple. Afterward, she admitted she was sore and needed constant treatment, but she kept pushing through. That's not a quote you throw away. That's the definition of grit.
This is what happened. They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call foul. It was a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called. People.
And yet the headlines celebrated Wilson. 25 points, 9 boards, 5 steals, 2 blocks. The box score glow up. But what those numbers don't reveal is how they came. Wilson didn't win this game on skill alone. She bulldozed her way into the paint, forced collisions, and got whistles Indiana never saw at the other end. Fans watching weren't fooled. They saw how tilted this game really was.
I mean, it's how you look at it. It looks, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you manipulate it to different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I mean, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so none of my business.
Aaliyah Boston lived that tilt firsthand. 13 rebounds and 10 points look respectable, but those numbers don't tell the story of constant elbows, shoves, and no calls. Every board she grabbed was a war. Every shot attempt was contested with more body than ball. This is a third-year player being treated like a crash test dummy. And instead of breaking, she kept competing. Her line looked steady, but in reality, it was survival mode from start to finish.
Kept her out of that space as much as she would have wanted to. She did end up with 9 points. 7-0. Aces run has been stopped. Sims.
In Odyssey, Sims deserves credit, too. She poured in 18 points, often dribbling through double teams, absorbing hits, and trying to create something out of broken possessions. Every time she found a rhythm, the whistle blew to stop the play. Every time Indiana built momentum, a foul call reset the game. Sims' buckets weren't just points. They were small acts of rebellion against a game that refused to let Indiana play free.
Purcell on Young. Sims over. Asia Wilson, she had to put some extra arm.
That's the tragedy of Game 2. The Fever didn't get beat. They got dragged into a mud fight they never signed up for. Their resilience showed in Hull's shooting, Boston's rebounding, and Sims' drives. But every spark was smothered by whistles and Vegas's brute force. The Aces didn't expose Indiana's weaknesses. They leaned on foul-heavy chaos, and the referees backed them up. And here's the real question. If Vegas needed both the officials and dirty play to scrape out a win at home, what happens when the series shifts to Indiana? What happens when the Fever return to Gainbridge Fieldhouse with their crowd behind them, burning with anger over how Game 2 unfolded? Because let's be real, this wasn't proof of the Aces' greatness. It was proof of their desperation. If the referees tilted Game 2 toward Las Vegas with 41 fouls and endless stoppages, the other factor that swung the game was strategy. Specifically, how did the Aces completely neutralize Kelsey Mitchell after she exploded for 34 in Game 1? That's the real tactical story. In the opener, Mitchell torched them from everywhere: catch-and-shoot threes, hesitation drives, mid-range pull-ups, even fearless attacks at the rim. Vegas had no answer. But by Game 2, she was smothered. Held to just 13 points, she didn't suddenly forget how to score. This was the result of a focused, suffocating game plan. Cut off her air supply and force anyone else to beat them.
Step on that note with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to contain a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball. I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around.
The Aces put multiple bodies on her at all times. Even when Mitchell didn't have the ball, defenders face-guarded her like she was the only player on the floor. Every cut came with bumps and elbows. Screens set for her were blown up by hard hedges or outright collisions. By the time she found daylight, the shot clock was draining and the quality of her looks had disappeared. The difference wasn't about skill, it was pure physical denial. And while the tape shows disciplined defense, living through it in real time felt like bruises, frustration, and constant whistles breaking rhythm.
The physicality is out of control, that's for sure. I mean, you can bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for the whole half court. You put two hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying that we're not fouling too. I'm not saying that.
What's wild is even Becky Hammon, Vegas's coach, admitted afterward she wasn't thrilled with how rough the game had become. Imagine that. Her team benefited from the whistle, from the stop-and-start chaos that shattered Indiana's flow, and yet she still expressed frustration at the level of physicality. That detail matters because it proves what everyone watching could see. The outcome wasn't built solely on smart adjustments. It was shaped almost entirely by the officiating, which allowed, and in some cases rewarded, the Aces' hyper-physical approach. Inside, Aaliyah Boston was still grinding. She finished with another double-double, 10 points and 13 boards, but those numbers don't show the pounding she absorbed. Every rebound was contested with shoves to the back or arms across the body. Every post-up turned into a wrestling match. Vegas also got clever. They spaced the floor, pulled Boston out of position, and then let Aya Wilson or Jackie Young drive into gaps where help came late. It wasn't artistry, it was exploitation. They knew Boston couldn't be everywhere, so they forced her to choose, and her stat line doesn't reflect how much ground she had to cover.
Now the starting point guard, and here's Hull, an early test. Great sign because her shooting has been off.
Yeah.
Mitchell. Short. Hull with another offensive rebound, turn, shoot, scores. 2 of their last 3. Hull again, yes. Oh.
And then came Lexie Hull. Vegas may have succeeded in erasing Mitchell, but they couldn't erase Hull. This was a player who was questionable to even suit up after her back injury in Game 1. Yet she not only played, she tied a franchise playoff record with 5 threes. Each shot was a dagger, a reminder that Indiana wouldn't fold no matter how ugly things got. Hull didn't just survive. She swung momentum, forcing Vegas to respect her shooting even as she winced with every fall to the hardwood. That's toughness you can't fake.
Run still. Lexie Hull has scored the last 6 points for Indiana with a couple of threes. Mitchell, good look. And she got it. Kelsey Mitchell in that first half had 9 points, but was just 1 of 5 from 3-point range. It was Lexie Hull doing the damage from 3, and now she's doing a Kelsey Mitchell imitation of the night. Sims gets the roll.
So yes, the Aces executed their adjustments. They packed in Mitchell, forced the Fever into secondary options, and leaned heavily on whistles to bail them out. But now the chessboard flips. The next 2 games aren't in Vegas. They're in Indianapolis, where 17,000 fans have been waiting to unleash the kind of energy that changes series. Here's the truth about Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's not just a court, it's an amplifier. Every run feels bigger, every whistle gets magnified, every defensive stand feeds into a wave of noise that rattles even the most experienced teams. We've already seen opponents crumble late because the Fever crowd refused to let up. There are no quiet moments in Indy. And while Las Vegas rode crowd energy to edge out Game 2, Indiana now walks into an environment where every call, every shove, every missed foul will be met with a roar too loud for officials to ignore.
I just asked you to look forward to this series going to your home court in Indianapolis. How much is that really going to make a difference in this series, and how much does it mean to you guys to have that home court advantage?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. Our fans, they show up and they show out, and so for us, just using that our own energy, but also using the energy in the crowd, I think it's gonna be
that matters. Officiating bias thrives in silence. When a shove on Boston goes unnoticed in Vegas, the game moves on. In Indy, 17,000 people erupting forces referees to acknowledge it. When Hull gets knocked to the floor on a cut, the crowd demands accountability. Home court isn't just about friendly rims. It's about collective pressure on every decision. For the Fever, that noise is fuel. Hull, taped up and battling pain, already proved she won't stop. Boston's work in the trenches only grows sharper with fans lifting her energy. And Mitchell, who had her worst playoff night in years, now walks into a building that chants her name before she even takes a shot. You can sense her frustration boiling over from Game 2. And at Gainbridge, that frustration is likely to transform into aggression and scoring fireworks. History is on Indiana's side, too. Teams that win Game 1 in a best-of-5 already tilt the math. And the Fever didn't just win Game 1. They blew Vegas out on their own floor. That kind of confidence doesn't evaporate because of one whistle-heavy loss. If anything, it hardens resolve. Add in a packed home arena, and suddenly the pressure isn't on Indiana. It's on the Aces, trying to prove their dominance wasn't built on referee whistles.
Yeah, we're excited. I know the last time it was the first playoff game in a really long time, so to be able to have 2 more for our fans that have been there with us all season, I'm really excited for that, and we definitely do feed off of their energy, so we're really looking forward.
Let's not forget how dangerous the Fever have already been at home this season. Double-digit deficits erased, opponents stunned by second-half surges, and a fan base that doesn't just cheer, they sustain. Those are the same people now furious about how Game 2 unfolded, ready to create a playoff atmosphere that feels more like a tidal wave than an audience. Even Hammond herself admitted, "Our experience there has not been great this season," which is as close as a coach gets to admitting Gainbridge is a problem. That's why these next 2 games are more than just a continuation of the series. They're a referendum. Can the Fever take everything? The fouls, the bruises, the no-calls, and turn it into power? Can they feed off the injustice of Game 2 and flip it into energy that fuels a knockout punch in Indy? Every sign points to yes. Hull already set the tone by refusing to quit. Boston's composure under fire is unshakable. And Mitchell, silenced once, is too proud and too talented not to answer back. Add Clark's leadership from the sidelines, rallying her teammates with every possession, and you've got the makings of a hostile takeover back home. So while Vegas may have celebrated their adjustments in Game 2, the reality is simple. Indiana didn't break. They absorbed. They learned. And now they return to their house with all the momentum waiting to be reclaimed. Game 3 at Gainbridge isn't just another stop. It's the pivot point. The Fever aren't coming home to survive. They're coming home to put the Aces on the ropes with the crowd as their weapon and revenge as their fuel. If you believe in Indiana's fire, drop a Let's Go Fever in the comments. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next.